Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome back to the 12th webinar of the Evidence-Based Policy and Action Roundtable series. Today's discussion, we shall focus on the fourth SDG goal, that is quality education. Titled as The Intersections of India's Education Policy and Rural Development, today's discussion will focus on the evidence on India's education sector and analyze India's education policy in terms of inclusion and child rights. Rural development has a major role to play in both sending the children to school and keeping them there. So we need to understand how rural development sector kind of intersects with education and also understand what is the implication of the new education policy in terms of inclusion issues of children in rural in education sector. Today's discussion will be led by three distinguished scholars of the field of education. First, we planned to have Professor Jandhyala B.G. Tilak. He is the former professor and Vice-Chancellor of NIEPA and ICS International Fellow and distinguished faculty of Council for Social Development, New Delhi. We also have with us Professor Jayanthi Narayan, including Professor Richard Rose from University of Northampton, UK, and Subhendu Bhattacharjee, lead of Policy, Research, Advocacy, and Documentary Division from Child Rights and Youth, that is CRIME. So before we have a detailed introduction of our panelists and delve into these questions regarding education and the rights or the challenges and intersections, we would like to invite our Director General, Dr. G. Narendra Kumar, to deliver an welcome address from his end. Sir, it's over to you.
Thank you, Ruchina. I will not be long and stand between the participants and the eminent speakers here, even though I would have long to talk about on this very important topic. I would confine my initial remarks to a few stylized facts concerning the education policy and the rural development intersection. In rural development, where we're situated today is something worthy of note. We made substantial progress with respect to rural infrastructure. We have had this very successful scheme of Prime Minister's Gram Sadak Yojana, which has taken motorable roads to almost every village of this country. Similarly, we have been able to provide good quality electricity supply to almost 95% of the villages. It may be that certain households and pockets within the village may not still be getting electricity supply, but broadly, electricity supply has reached 95% of the villages of this country. Now, under the Jal Jeevan Mission, which is a simple way forward suggested by the Prime Minister to improve quality of life, we are providing good quality pipe drinking water supply to almost every rural household in the country. We are on way to do this. We've almost achieved 60% of the households connected with rural drinking water supply. So we made substantial progress already with respect to infrastructure growth in rural areas. But at the same time, the rural economy is still lagging. Rural economy, which was substantially dependent upon agriculture, is lagging, and the agricultural contribution to the GDP is continuously declining. Last figures that we have is below 15% contribution of agriculture to the GDP. But at the same time, the number of people dependent on agriculture, very large, close to 50% or little over that, which goes to the extent of underemployment in the rural areas. So this is what needs to be addressed. How do we address the unemployment issues or underemployment issues in rural areas effectively? Through good quality education. And I believe the next wave of rural development and economic growth will come from a strong educational system which provides good quality education. But here we need to understand the type of education that is needed to give a boost to economic growth in rural areas. Is the current system of education adequate to give a boost to growth in rural areas is what needs to be looked into. Are the current type of schooling, which substantially emphasizes on rote learning, is that good to give a boost? Is it sufficient to give a boost to the economic growth in rural areas? Improving the quality of life in rural areas is what needs to be thought of. There are initiatives which are focusing on improving skills of rural youth, but quite a lot of this rural youth who get skilled, they get skilled in urban areas and migrate to urban areas, do not stay for long in the rural areas. Also, there's the other thing initiative that is being done under the Unnat Bharat Abhiyan of teaching students problem solving skills, not just end at rote learning. Even advanced institute students such as IITs are now being taken to rural areas, work with problems, and learn to solve real life problems. Should these be way forwards for our education system to give a boost to growth in rural areas is something that we need to think about. I've had the good fortune, I must say, working as higher education secretary, technical education secretary in Delhi, also as the school education secretary in Pondicherry. One of the things which is plaguing the education system, the school education system, is the rapid multiplication in the number of schools, dispersion in the number of schools in the rural areas, much below the economic level for providing services. Schools are so far dispersed now that we are not able to provide for good infrastructure in those schools. We are not able to provide good number of teachers in those schools. As a result, the quality of education also would be suffering from such dispersed types of schools in the rural areas. So what can be done about that also, I think, needs focus, attention. Another stylized fact that I wanted to place before the participants here today are the findings of the IT industry, which has grown, loud, and they have said that 20 to 25% of the IT graduates who are trained by the various institutes of this country, universities of this country, only can be employed by the industry. Rest of the people, the industry would reject them. They would not be adequate to fit into the industry. This talks of the crisis of the quality of education. There's a crisis in the quality of education, be that at the school level, be that at the college level, or at the university level. Unless we fix this, we're not going to have good quality manpower to man various of our facilities, various of our institutions, to be able to do well and thrive. That's why I say that the next stage of growth for the country, rural development of the country, should perhaps come from better quality of education, which we need to intensely focus upon. Another and the last stylized fact that I wanted to place before you today is about the manpower in the rural development and Panchayati Raj sector. The rural development and Panchayati Raj sector, government makes investments of almost 4 lakh crore rupees every year. About 2 lakh crores coming from the central government and a matching amount coming from the state government. Of course, there have been various proponents who said that a lot of money which the government spends goes down the drain, is wasted, and nihilists say that it is because of corruption, it is because of inability of government's capacity to be able to deliver, government is not serious, incapable, and such like criticism is heaped on the government. But we in the NIRD, National Rural Development Panchayati Raj, and the business of capacity building, mainly for government functionaries who deliver these programs. But when we continue to deliver these programs for the government functionaries, we realize that many of the government functionaries who come to our institute are never trained, groomed professionally in the rural development and Panchayati Raj sector. Should these manpower be entrusted with implementation of such a large scale of investment of 4 lakh crore rupees? Are they up to speed to invest the programs, to implement the programs for such a large amount of investment in the country? Obviously, they are not prepared to effectively deal with these programs. Whose fault is it that they are not adequately prepared? Are there good enough programs in this country, educational programs in this country, for producing good quality managers, administrators who can deal with RD and PR? Is it not a failing of our education system? Could we not see the opportunity and the need to train people, skilled people sufficiently to be able to tackle these programs, and which takes such a large amount of investment? I think these are the few stylized facts I thought I'll place before you as some pointers for discussion during this webinar. And I will stop at this, and I do not want to stand anymore between the eminent speakers who are gathered here. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for the address. Now, coming to the main agenda of the program, we are going to start the panel discussion on intersections of education and rural development policy. Today, we have with us, as we were talking about earlier, 3 leading global experts on the sector of education. First, I would like to welcome Professor Jandhyala B.G. Tilak. He is the former professor and Vice-Chancellor of National University of Educational Planning and Administration. He is currently the ICSSR National Fellow and Distinguished Professor at the Council for Social Development, New Delhi, India. Doctorate from the Delhi School of Economics, Dr. Tilak has taught, besides NIEPA, in the University of Delhi, the Indian Institute of Education, and as a visiting professor at Center for International Cooperation in Education, Hiroshima University, Virginia University, and Sri Sathya Sai Institute of Higher Learning. Professor Tilak was also on the research staff of the World Bank and has been a consultant to many national and international bodies. He is widely published, and he is also author of several books, including Economics of Inequality in Higher Education, Education for Development in Asia, Higher Education, Public Good Markets, and Education and Development in India, Critical Issues in Public Policy. He has served as the editor of Journal of Educational Planning and Administration. He also served as the president of the Comparative Education Society of India and is on the board of Comparative Education Society of Asia. Recipient of several honors and awards, including Swami Pranavananda Saraswati National Award of the UGC, Dr. Malcolm Adishesha Award of 2003, Inspirational Teacher of the Year Global Education Award, Devang Mehta Award for Outstanding Contributions to Education 2015. Among many other honors, he had the privilege of delivering the keynote address in a meeting of the Nobel laureates in Barcelona in 2005. Thank you so much, Professor Tilak, for your time and agreeing to take the session. And our panelists also include Dr. Jayanthi Narayan and her team. Dr. Jayanthi Narayan is a special educator, currently a visiting professor of inclusive education, Faculty of Health, Education and Society at the University of Northampton, UK. She has retired as the Deputy Director from the National Institute for the Empowerment of Persons with Intellectual Disabilities from Government of India. She completed her post-graduation from the State University of New York, USA, specializing in education, learning disabilities, and mental retardation. She holds another MA and PhD in education. She received the Fulbright Senior Research Fellowship for Postdoctoral Research Program at Boston College, Massachusetts, USA. She was awarded honorary doctorate also by the University of Northampton, UK in 2018. Dr. Narayan has been the consultant in spatial and inclusive education in countries including Indonesia, Maldives, China, Bhutan, and Cambodia, hired by UNICEF, UNDP, WHO, and other international agencies. She has written numerous manuals and has research publications in national and international journals of repute and many chapters in books. She was an associate editor for the Oxford Encyclopedia of Inclusive and Special Education, published by the Oxford University Press in 2021. Thank you, Dr. Narayan, for joining us today with your team. And I take it that you are going to introduce your team members as you start speaking in your time. Next, we have Subhendu Bhattacharjee, who has more than 22 years of experience in areas of human and child rights. Currently, he is heading the Policy, Research, Advocacy and Documentation, or PRAD Division of Child Rights and Youth, or CRI. Earlier, he was the program head of CRI's North India operations, and in the states of Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Rajasthan, Delhi, Haryana, and Jammu and Kashmir, he has served for over 12 years. Before joining CRI, he worked in National Center for Advocacy Studies, or NCAS, in Pune. He has done his master's and MPhil in mass communication and holds bachelor's and master's degree in law, that is LLB and LLM. Welcome, Subhendu Bhattacharjee, for this session and agreeing to be with us. Now, I would like to request Professor Tilak to take over the presentation. After Professor Tilak's presentation, we will move on to Dr. Jayanthi and her team. Sir, over to you. Kindly unmute, sir, Professor Tilak.
Okay. Okay. I'm sharing this. No. Wait a second, please.
No problems. Please take it.
Just 1 second. Yeah. Yeah, thank you very much for giving me this opportunity, and I'm sorry for the technical hitches that may still come in between. I'm really grateful to NIRD for giving me this opportunity to join this very, very eminent panel to discuss on evidence-based policy and action. In fact, in this roundtable is a very special one, and that's a focus. And the roundtable is also focusing, as I understand from the communication that I got, is on the post-COVID-19 situation and the educational situation and the educational evidence-based policy and actions in the education sector. And that's the context in which I thought I would better to speak about COVID-19 and education, and what is the evidence that we have, what is the policy initiatives that are being taken, and what is the action that is already being taken. One expects obviously a good relation between evidence, policy, and action. Evidence to be the basis based upon which you make the policies, and then the action follows. But sometimes it's quite possible that there is very limited evidence, or there is no evidence, but still we will be compelled to make policies. And perhaps sometimes even without policy directions, actions may be taken. That's happening in many sectors, and that's also happening in education in India for quite some time. But I would discuss largely in the context of the COVID-19 and the present context. Now, the COVID-19 is now very well known. It's a global pandemic. With more than 6 billion population people being affected by this, and 6.7 million deaths in the world. Even in India, I think the numbers are very, very, very startling. 4.5 crores per people have been affected by this COVID pandemic, and there are more than 5.3 lakh deaths in the last couple of years. And that's not the end of it. Still, the numbers are rising, and the new variants are emerging every day. So far, what is that we know about it? How is it caused? How is it being spread? How many variants are there? Perhaps we know nothing so far compared to the developments that are taking place. We also know very little how to control it effectively. We are experimenting with several vaccines, and we not know how many vaccines would be necessary, how many actions would be really effective, and whether they will completely cure it or they are only short-term solutions. Whether in fact the whole virus is a very short-term phenomenon, like some of the earlier viruses in our recent history, with just short-term implications that can be overlooked in the long run, or it's a very long-term phenomenon. It is likely to stay for quite some time here, and certainly will have long-term implications in the years to come. I think so far the knowledge is very, very weak in this. Nothing is clear. There are quite a few predictions that are made about the virus spread, etc., and the vaccines, but I think all predictions are going away. Many scholars and many planners have made some bold attempts of analyzing the long-term impact of COVID, but I say that even before we fully understand the nature of the crisis or the nature of the pandemic. What I would like to quickly do is briefly describe what is the global devastation that is taking place under 4 phases. The first phase, where a phase of complete lockdown, which I feel is an immediate reaction to the crisis, perhaps immediate necessary reaction to the crisis. Then there are short-term actions and short-term developments that are taking place that are still continuing, because we still feel that it's a short-term phenomenon. And then there's a phase 3, where the schools are being partially opened with some kind of
Professor
developments.
Tilak, I'm sorry to interrupt. I think we are not able to see the change in your slides. So if you change it in the file, we will be able to see.
Okay, just
yes,
1 second.
Thank you.
No. Is it now? Are you able to see?
Sir, we can see the PPTs. Just a request that you change the PPTs in the file and not in the presentation. Then
it's not moving now.
Sir, we can see the file, not the presentation. So we can see the PPT file. So if you move it there, we will be able to see the change.
Oh, okay. You mean say this is visible?
Yes. Right.
Okay. Then there are then there is a third phase where there is slightly more improvement in the situation, and this is the schools are being partially opened with different kinds of modalities that are being adapted. And we claim in some cases the whole sector is fully reopened, some with safety measures and some not necessarily with any safety measures. But I still feel that fully they are not still fully not opened, and still we have not reached the normal situation, normal quote unquote. That's normal situation is still awaited, and when we will be able to reach, we do not know very clearly. Under these circumstances, we are having medium to long-term perspectives, and also some plans and some actions are being taken, which I will briefly describe. Now, as we know, the COVID has created the largest disruption of education system in the history of the mankind. It affected as many as 1.6 billion students in schools and colleges and universities across the world, and 63 million teachers. And it affected all levels of education, starting from pre-primary, nursery levels to the higher levels of education, technical education, research, and every activity, and all training activities. And the entire world is, in fact, affected by this, because more than 190 countries in the world are affected by it. I think there is only 1 or 2 countries which are not just affected, but they are very small countries in somewhere in the Mediterranean region. 94% of the students' population and 99% among these low-income groups, low-income countries, are seriously affected by this crisis. And it was feared, and the fears are still found to be very strong, that this crisis is really a big education crisis that may lead to a generational catastrophe of serious dimensions. And there can be permanent loss in learning among millions of children of the present generation, children and the youth of the present generation, and that will affect the long-term developments of the countries, the whole world, in fact. And of course, there will be loss of trillions of dollars in economic terms. The world has really come to a stop. In the phase 1, as we know very well, there is a complete lockdown of the entire country, in fact, the entire world. and somebody described it as the world comes to standstill. All activities are put on hold. There are no travels, domestic, road travel, railway travel, air travel, everything was closed. And all academic activities in the schools, colleges, and universities are completely closed or destabilized. Schools were closed, hostels were closed, libraries, classroom teaching was suspended, examinations, assessment, name any activity in the education sector, whether it's a primary school education admissions or university level entrance examinations, everything was stopped. There is nothing like games, there are nothing like sports, there are nothing like other academic activities. That was the first phase that we went through. And during that phase, nothing has taken place with respect to education, and nothing has taken place except basic survival of the people facing this grave crisis. Then then we came to know that perhaps the crisis is not so short term as perhaps we felt. It's likely to be for a long period, but we do not know how long. But certainly we cannot continue like this. So everybody understood that we should try to learn how to live with Corona. And living with Corona has become an important phase. And the education sector, it has been strongly stated that we should not stop learning, because that's the most precious investment that we make in the people, even to face the crisis in a very significant way. And that's the reason why I think it was strongly suggested that we should have new patterns, new workloads, new methods have to be developed, and we should manage the continuity of learning activities in the schools and colleges without allowing this education cycle to be completely broken. And in fact, there was a big danger of the cycle getting broken at one point of time. And we should see that desirable changes are necessarily made. And what we need is, the only option when we wish to live with Corona is to make some plans, immediate plans, and short-term plans, short-term policies, medium-term and long-term plans have to be developed by the education sector and by the rest of the country, rest of the economies also. It's really a challenging time for everybody, including specifically for the academic community, the teachers, the administrators, the planners, the policymakers, to work under such uncertainty without knowing how long that will continue. And after the schools, after the first phase, then once we realized that the teaching has to be resumed, I think the only way that was thought viable at that point of time was to have something like some arrangements for online educational activities, which is described by many as an emergency response to the crisis, as a short-term emergency response to the crisis. So some schools, good resource-based, resourceful schools, or schools with some sufficient amount of resources, could adopt these digital tools and launch online activities, particularly in teaching and little bit evaluation and little bit interactions. So there is a big shift from face-to-face methods of teaching and learning to online teaching methods. Teaching from home, like learning, like working from home, it became normal, and so students are learning from home. So working from home, teaching from home, and learning from home, learning at home, became the activities of that period. And in fact, since we were not prepared at all, the techniques, the resources were improvised. We do not have really sufficiently any skills. In fact, I can say that no school in the country, no university in the country has at that point of time sufficiently well prepared to face the crisis, so they don't have any resources. So it's really a crisis-driven emergency remote teaching practice that we have developed. And we should recognize that it is completely different from well-planned online programs. Quite often we compare this experience with the online programs and make comments. In fact, if you want to make good online programs, you have to really make very good planning. But for this emergency response, there was no time for planning even. So we adopted Zoom methods, Zoom online webinars and all kinds, which provided very, very limited interactions between the teachers and the students. And certainly there were no animated discussions, etc., etc. And it has created different kinds of problems among the children, among the teachers, and among the rest of among the parents, etc. also. One of the immediate response that the markets have responded to this crisis is Since the online methods are being talked about, immediately several commercial enterprises have come up under different names: academies, unacademies, Udemies, Baizu, many academies came up. All kinds of different names are there. I think people are familiar with some of these names nowadays. That's the second phase that we were going through. What has happened during the first and second phase, particularly in the second phase, is there are several surveys on which how much we are prepared. There is a reasonably good amount of database and quite a few surveys done by Save the Children, ActionAid, Oxfam, the school team, and quite a few government and non-governmental agencies, and how the schools performed during that period. And I would like to briefly go through some of the evidence that we have before I go to the policy actions. Number one, in 2019-20, that is just on the eve of the crisis, how the schools work in the system. While more than 80% of the schools have electricity, which is of course basically essential, and at least that's an lucky picture, only 38% of the schools have computers. And almost the same thing was reported to be. In fact, they are having 37% of the schools are having reported to be functional computers, but only less than 1/4 of the schools have internet facilities, which is absolutely essential if you want to have online programs. The situation is certainly slightly better with respect to private aided schools and private unaided schools, but government schools are in a very bad situation. We don't have exact information, but certainly given the trends that we have and the knowledge of the rural schools are at the bottom. They suffer from electricity, they suffer from lack of computers, they suffer from lack of internet facilities. And as I said, in the country as a whole, hardly 1/3 of the children, 1/3 of the schools have computers, functional computers, and about 1/5 of the schools have internet facilities. With those activities, with those kind of resources, the online activities have taken place. In fact, 85% of the schools have electricity, but as many as 10 states have much less than the national average. In the sense that in the 10 states, the average is less than 85%. Similarly, 36% of the schools have functional computers, but as many as 13 states have functional computers, much less than 36%. And so is the case with respect to internet. Nearly half the country doesn't have internet of the level, which is also very, very low, which is the national average of 24%. So we were in a very, very bad situation. In fact, the National Sample Survey gives you slightly more detailed data based upon the households, because in fact, the schooling is from home and also learning is at home. We should look at how households are prepared about it. And here we have the data with respect to rural and urban. Only 4.4% of the rural schools have computers. The schools, when I say schools, primaries, upper primary and secondary put together. And 15% of schools have internet facilities. In the urban schools, the situation is slightly better, but rural and urban put together, only 10% of the schools had computers. And among the young children, among all the people aged 5 and plus in the households, less than 10% of the people in the rural areas were able to use an electronic facility of computers. And 13% were able to use some internet. Use of internet is really widely discussed. Widely described to use a mobile phone, to check a mobile, to send a message. Anything is said to be known as able to use internet. And among the youth, not really, 15 to 29 age group, 1/4 of the rural people have computers, access to computers. And 1/4 of the rural households have access to computers, and 30% of the households have people who can use the internet facilities. And actually, who use the internet is, of course, much smaller than those numbers. So we find a grave situation in the country as a whole, and the situation is much sharper in the rural areas. who have the ability to use internet among the 5+ population in the country. This varies very, very high, but the maximum that we find is in 50% in Delhi, and this is between 10 to 20% in quite a few states, Rajasthan, Andhra Pradesh, Assam. In fact, in states like Andhra Pradesh, which is said to be tech savvy, and West Bengal, Madhya Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Chhattisgarh, etc., etc. And the situation is really far from satisfactory for any kind of online activities to be meaningfully taken up. So, how many children were really studying? In fact, there were studies of this kind that were very clearly taken up, particularly during this phase 2 and spilling over to phase 3. Percentage of school children who are actually studying online regularly at home in 2021, that is, as I said, phase 2 spilling over to phase 3. 8% of the rural children were studying regularly on online, and the percentage is 24% in urban areas. And 37% of the children are not studying at all during those days in the rural areas. That's a big number. In fact, we have to contrast with other kinds of evidence that we have. 48% of the children are, in fact, among those who are who are spending some time with the activities, are unable to read more than a few words. And only 12% of the rural children have smartphones, access to smartphones. While access to smartphone doesn't mean that it is accessible to all the members of the household or all the time that is required for the school activities, etc. And many people have, both in urban and rural areas, connectivity problems are very severe. In fact, we find those problems severe even in the metropolitan cities. And nearly half these children find the online classes really very difficult to follow. And as a result, they lost interest in education also. So 8% of the children in the rural areas were studying on online classes or through videos, etc., while the proportion is 25% in urban areas. And that's the sizable activity that was taken up in a massive way in the entire country, even though other methods like watching television, private tuitions were also taken up, but I think they were not really on a large scale. Now, the parents were asked whether the children were really learning from these activities or what's happening, what are they doing it. Parents obviously feel that, in fact, children do not have adequate online facilities, they do not have online access for whatever may be the reason, and the proportion varies between 8% in rural areas and 23% in urban areas. And what is more importantly, we find that is among all the people, with the primary schools and upper primary schools, among the rural children and among the urban children, the reading abilities of the children have come down quite significantly. The 75% of the parents feel that the children's reading abilities have declined during this period compared to the earlier period. I think that's really an important, shocking finding that we should recognize very clearly. What has been the experience of the teachers and the students during this period? Teachers are not really aware of digital tools, how to use them quite efficiently, effectively. Obviously, they do not have experience. They were never trained on these activities. And they also find it very difficult to make when making classroom management, remote classroom management. There is no training, there are no facilities also. So all facilities are improvised facilities made on an urgent basis. So quite a few teachers, good numbers of teachers got demotivated and frustrated, and many people have also reported to have left the jobs. One of the important reasons that they gave is the online facilities are not really very good for the methods of communication between the teachers and the students and the parents, or teachers and the parents. That lack of communication really demotivated the teachers to a great extent. Students also felt that the socialization, which is very, very important, was completely missing because they were close to small rooms all the time and small screens all the time. And that also caused stress and mental health of the children, which really pose a big problem nowadays. There was no play, no contact with anybody, and confinement to the small screens and small rooms. And of course, rural poor families, not only rural, but also in urban areas, who critically depended upon midday meals or the school facilities or Anganwadis for younger children, they suffered really loss of food, nutrition, and that's also a matter of serious worry. That one has to be really worried. Now, what two main issues that came up very clearly is that there is uneven spread of digital facilities in the entire country, and of course the distribution and the position is much weaker. In the rural areas, and teachers are not at all trained. If they are sufficient, different kinds of losses, and both because of lockdown and online learning activity on online learning programs. The Ajit Premji University in a study has estimated that there is 82% loss in language skills of children in primary education, and in mathematics the loss is as high as 92%. And if we can estimate in some terms, in some economic terms, how meticulously they were done in the country, in the world as a whole, something like $10 trillion was found with the total learning loss, and which amounts to something like 69% of GDP of a country, according to OECD estimates. It was also forecasted that the GDP would fall by 1.5% compared to the past, or compared to the potential growth, otherwise earlier predicted growth. For the remainder of the entire century, means nearly the next 80 years. So socialization is a big loss for the children, for the parents, for the teachers in the educational activities, when we are confining to educational activities. The stress, mental health of the children with no play, no contact is an important health problem that we find. And a closely related health problem is the loss of food and nutrition for particularly who and lower income groups. Widening of inequalities in education have taken place both in terms of access and also in learning. Essentially because the online activities are not accessible to all, and the available facilities are unequally distributed and inefficiently used. And for the many people, there's loss of employment and a lot of wages, which has resulted in increase in the child labor activities, necessitating dropouts from schools. In fact, dropouts is really a big problem, which was really tackled very efficiently over the last few years, as perhaps emerges as an important problem nowadays for the educational planners. And these short-term effects have very long-term repercussions. And loss in literacy and learning levels could be really a permanent loss. Well, there are also reports that quite a good number of teachers died during this period because of the COVID. And we don't have exhaustive figures, but the numbers are really very big, at least in some cases. Now that's phase 2, when online activities were the only activities that were taken up. Now in the phase 3, there is a slow, partial graded opening of the schools. And schools also have taken hybrid activities, online and also offline activities at the same time. Some schools have arranged new kinds of classroom systems. Students and teachers with masks have to come. Of course, the social distance was followed, the sanitizers and others, hygiene facilities were made compulsory, but they were available to all the children, etc., etc. is an important issue. And they were also staggering in the sense that some students will come on first day and some students on the second day of the week and some students on third day of the week, or shift in the morning shift, evening shift, etc., etc. And what was experienced was very clearly, not only that the safety norms were could not be clearly enforced, but student attendance has fallen very significantly, essentially because, as I noted, the students' interest in the educational activities has come down, and it's becoming very difficult to get them back. School activities are still not normal. Schools are not fully open. Teachers' ability to handle online teaching programs, and now in the phase 3, simultaneously online and also offline. In fact, in the same class, same teacher was to do both, and that was really a big task and big challenge for the teachers. And given that there was no training at all beforehand, and that was a big challenge. And inequalities could be widened further and further, inequalities in education. and the learning losses could be further intense if that system was to continue to a great extent. The teachers were to split their focus and attention between the two modes, the students in the class and also the students in the offline mode, and that's really very difficult for the teachers to do, particularly with a large number of children in the classes. Phase 4 is most current phase, where perhaps schools are said to be fully opened, some as with some safety measures in place and some not necessarily with so strict measures. But as I said, I strongly feel that still we have to fully reopen. We cannot say that we have to fully reopen the schools. Now the question is, will we return to normal? The new normal, what is normal is also a question. The old normal or the new normal. One dilemma is, will we go back to normal, forget about all these developments that have taken place during the last 2-3 years, or the alternative is no going back to normalcy at all. We have to really adopt the new method, and which I briefly described as face-to-face to faceless systems of education. And that's an important phrase in education that matters a lot. So there is a choice for the educational policy makers to have a traditional method completely, or to have a virtual model completely, or to have a hybrid model. The three choices. A hybrid model which is blended, but I personally feel that that should be a model which with a heavy, now what is being talked about is a heavy virtual model supplemented by a small component of traditional trades is being talked about, but I prefer, of course, the opposite way rather than this. Now, the global perspectives are under these circumstances, which have a lot of implications for the policy makers, that the present crisis will lead to a long-term this present crisis gives an opportunity to make a revolutionary changes in education, and there will be an educational revolution. In fact, surprising innovations can be made. Public-private partnerships will be built up very, very strongly, and prominent role will be given to the digital methods and digital tools. The digital tools, at the same time, even the world policy predictors have understood that the digital divide would be really a very serious challenge that has to be addressed. Well, the World Bank was very, very clear that the remote learning and technology and educational technology use that we adopted during the last 2-3 years is going to stay here permanently, and that we cannot get rid of it. And perhaps the bank also favors that would be bank, not only bank, but many perhaps favor that would be the best method. Now, what will be the long-term, short-term, medium, long-term effects? As some of the evidence is limited evidence. In fact, with respect to the COVID, all the evidence is limited, scattered, etc. But some strong, robust evidence also came up from these scattered evidences. The COVID-19 pandemic has changed the education sector forever. There is a fall in demand, there is fall in enrollments in education, there is retrenchment, there is unemployment, etc., and of course, fall in household economic levels. An important loss with respect to schooling activities is the loss of interest in schooling of the children and also of the teachers. And psychological and mental health problems are likely to continue for quite some time, and you need really very special efforts. And that's really a very big challenge. Now, the likely developments, if you look at the kind of trends that are taking place in India, particularly in developing countries like India, is the digital methods will have a prominent role, and educational technology and online methods are here to stay. Now, the only question is whether there will be wholesale online training or hybrid wholesale online learning activities, in the sense replacing the traditional methods, or will have hybrid modes. If it is hybrid mode blended, traditional model supplemented by the virtual methods is perhaps the better method, even though the other options are being talked about in quite a few places. What we need, essentially, what kind of policy strategies that are necessary is, immediate plan is to clear the backlog in terms of backlog in learning, backlog in the syllabus covering, etc., and arrest the learning loss that has taken place. Now, the strategy that was adopted by some of the schools already, perhaps some of the states also have endorsed it, state governments have endorsed it, is to have additional classroom hours, extend the classroom hours for late couple of hours more, and try to see that the entire syllabus is covered in the time. That is increasing the burden on the teachers to provide extra teaching and students to learn to manage the loss. Now, educationists really find it a problem whether how far it is good to hasten the learning process among the children, among particularly young children. That is what they have to slowly learn and assimilate in 2 years will have to be done in 1 year or something of that kind. Another important challenge that we have is how to get back those students who have lost interest in education, who have dropped out, and who are hesitant, perhaps they're even reluctant to come back to the school system. So what we need in the short term is a recovery plan, address the issues of stress, mental health of the children, lack of interest among the teachers and the students. One. Second, I think is also important that we develop specific methods of de-addicting the children from digital devices. Some children got really fascinated. They spend a lot of time spoiling their health also, even when it is not absolutely necessary, but they got habituated to this. And there is a need to make really special efforts to de-addict them from those devices. Get back to children, to the schools, to the traditional methods of teaching. And what we experience in some cases is that there's a big shift of students from private schools to government schools. And if that can be taken up very strongly and enforced, and they can take advantage of it by improving the government school systems, I think that would be a good plus point for the government school systems. In the medium term is really not really long term medium. We have a serious shortage of teachers everywhere in the entire country. But at this stage, since you have double task nowadays, you have to recruit the qualified teachers in full numbers. And also at the same time, you focus on the training of those teachers to face the students who are really having different kinds of problems with mental fears and also physical inabilities to cope up with the kind of curriculum, with the kind of extra syllabus, etc., etc. And I said, I think it's time to strengthen the public school system in a big way. Long term, again, I don't have any definition of a long term. I think Keynes once said, Keynes and economists have said that long term and all people are dead, so we don't have to worry about long term. So long term is also something like a slightly medium term. We need heavy investment in school infrastructure. And that infrastructure has to be in the traditional schools, buildings, walls, classrooms, etc., etc., and also modern infrastructure that will help better learning, enable better learning, etc. But certainly not the other way, not one at the cost of the other in either way. And perhaps we have to do some experimentation with hybrid teaching before we come to a conclusion that hybrid teaching could be the best method that can be taken up very seriously. And what we have to do in the hybrid teaching methods is to have heavy direct contact, offline methods, and peripherally or give less importance to virtual teaching and online methods. Heavy concentration on strengthening of the public school system with heavy investment, of course. But we should recognize that there is no substitute to traditional mode of teaching and learning that has been tested for centuries, and you cannot completely replace it with modern methods. But there is a danger that the markets and with the technology market that is developing can usurp education altogether. And it's already being stated, in fact, some limited evidence is coming from the field that education technology is posing as a big threat to good education. It may harm the interests of the children in general and interests of the poor people and interests of the rural children much more because they don't have any access. And if that is being taken as a major instrument of educational policies, then the normal traditional method gets weakened and the children will be doubly deprived. And with the educational technology, the experience is hardly 18% of the poor and lower middle class children are some kind of happy is also quote unquote with the services offered by some of these companies, while the percentage is 31% among the middle and high income groups. So the point to be noted is that even among the high income groups, not even 1/3 of the children are happy with these educational technology tools in a meaningful way. I'll make this one particular comment with respect to this because this is the most important policy initiative that is coming up in a big way. With respect to these online methods or virtual teaching methods, I think there are quite a few positives. One, I think the potential to be inclusive and being potential to be accessible even to the nook and corners of the country, in the rural areas, the tribal areas, in the forests, etc. The potential is high. Practically, of course, there is a big difference between the potential and the practice. And it's also highly cost efficient because there is no physical movement of either the teachers or the students and physical buildings, etc. And some people say that's also environmental friendly. But the negatives are much more significant. The human agency gets deactivated, particularly the teacher, who is the most important person in educational activity, is being almost replaced by a mechanical teacher or a machine teacher, a robot. So the loss of human touch, the contact and interactions will seriously affect not only the socialization skills, but the skills with respect to education and the personality development of the young children. And the kind of dispersion that takes place, we cannot say that digital facilities will be equally distributed in the entire country, accessible equally to all the people in the near future. How long is the future is also not certain. Whether regionally or socially between economic and also between economic groups of population, perhaps one cannot expect an equal distribution or fairly equal distribution in their access. Given that, the danger of having going for more and more, ending up with more inequalities in education, both in access and also in learning, could be very, very serious. I'll end with this particular statement. Kasturi Rangan, who is the champion, who is the architect of the new educational policy 2020, who also, of course, proposed the National Education Technology Forum and gave a lot of importance for education technology. But I think his emphasis was also cautioned that to such and confined to certain areas. So he said once that playfulness, creativity, and many other aspects which are essential for children's development can never be transformed through online learning. Similarly, C.N.R. Rao, who was the scientific advisor to the Prime Minister of India, also stated almost similarly, online education cannot inspire in minds and can actually be, quote unquote, disastrous for children and for their development. And that is a point that one has to really clearly understand it. I'll stop here and join the panel. And if there are any questions and answers, I'll be very, very happy to take it up. Thank you. Thank you very much for the opportunity given to me. And I hope people appreciate some of the points that were raised and will be taken up for discussion. Thank you, Dr. Vichira, and thank you all for giving it.
Yeah, thank you so much, Professor Tilak. Thank you for the presentation. We shall take up the question and answer at the end of all the talks, if that is okay, because we also want to go move towards our next group who are joining from a different time zone and have other things in their agenda. So joining here today is Professor Jayanthi Narayan and her team, Professor Richard Rose.
Yeah.
Yeah. Professor Narayan, you can take it up from here, and we shall take a combined question and answer session at the end of the panel discussion.
Okay. Professor Tilak, Professor Dr. Narinder Kumar, and Subhendu ji, and Ruchira and Partha, and all the participants, namaskar, and thank you for this opportunity to be part of this roundtable today. And Professor Richard Rose and Mr. Shankar Mattam are two people, and also Ms. Pratima, three people who joined in one of the studies we conducted that Ruchira had referred to and said, you join in this and talk about the study, a comparison of urban and rural facilities for children with disabilities. Professor Rose is from the University of Northampton, and he was the lead in this study. Since I'm going to talk about this study, also, I requested Ruchira ji if they could also join so that if they have anything to contribute, and she was kind enough to give the link to them. So I'll try to be brief so that there could be discussion. I'll try and share the slide. Ruchira, do I do entire screen or a window? I have minimized it.
Please use the entire screen.
Entire screen? I have already opened and minimized it. Let me see what it does.
It's yet to sync, I think. We are yet to see it.
It's not showing my PPT. It shows the screen, our screen. It is not showing the PPT that I have opened and minimized. A window should I do or entire screen? No, it is
your
still
entire
doing the
screen,
same
the
thing.
first option. I think it's not syncing at our end. We are not able to. No issues. I'll share it from my end, Dr. Jayanthi, if that is okay with you.
Because I have opened and minimized it on my desktop, but it's not showing. Usually it will show immediately and then we'll be able to make use of it. Yeah, if you can, let us not waste time. Already we are running short of time.
Yes, I'll share it from my end.
Please
no issues.
Share it. Can you?
Is the PPT visible?
Not yet, but it is in process, I think. Yeah. Now it is visible.
Can I see the slides change?
Yeah. I will let you know each time you have to change. Yeah, let it be here. Thank you. So friends, I'm going to talk about the education of children with disabilities in rural area because they are also citizens with us and they also have the equal right as we see today with the acts and policies and everything. So I'm going to take a few minutes to talk about our educational system and children's in rural and urban is a study that Ruchira had mentioned, so it'll take a little more time on that. Next slide, please. Next slide. Yeah, usually disabilities are basically in major three groups. That is sensory, that includes vision impairment and hearing impairment. And then motor, that tends to use our speech and movement, mobility related. And third one to do with our brain, the intellectual and developmental disability. These are three broad areas where one tends to have a disability. And the rights of persons with, next one please. Rights of Persons with Disabilities 2016 includes 21 disabilities. Earlier we had 7 disabilities. The act that came in place was in 1995 that had 7, but now in 2016 these are the 16 disabilities that Government of India has identified and included, which means all of them have rights and entitlements. This is the point we have to remember, pass on the message. Like they have their own rights and entitlement, right from prevention, early detection, early intervention, preschool, schooling, higher education, and old age. All the way through, they have their own rights that they will be able to exercise. Next one. Yeah, in this, the developmental disabilities tend to have children broadly put in a basket. The developmental disabilities that includes intellectual disability, autism, cerebral palsy, learning disabilities. So it's a condition due to an impairment in the physical or language or intellectual, intelligence related, cognitive, learning and behavioral areas. I'm just taking a few slides to put this introduction so that the rest of what I say will connect. That's the reason I'm not taking a class, I'm just giving the basics. Yeah. So it can happen in the developmental period, that is before the age of 18 in children. And next one. So what if the children have developmental disabilities? So it can affect their day-to-day functioning, usually lasts throughout the person's life. And the key point here is that with early intervention and training, this can be minimized. So earlier, the child, even if it is a suspicion that the development is slower, development is medical attention, so that early intervention minimizes the effect of disability in the child. This is a message I'm giving to all of you to carry with you and pass it on everywhere, wherever, while you are traveling in bus and train or in the neighborhood, community, wherever. So the number of children with severe disabilities we are likely to minimize. Each one of us, we are a drop that will make the ocean, right? Next one. Yeah, this is a rough percentage you have. I'm saying estimates because there is no proper numbers available. Census and NSSO don't match. So the numbers are different. So what you see on the screen is a rough estimate. So intellectual disability about 2%. More than one disability is a multiple disability. That's about 0.2%. Autism has not yet been included in census or NSSO. It's currently, it is said as 1 in 500, but it is increasing is what is happening now. So also learning disability is not done any census or NSSO, but it is considered internationally as 7 to 10%. Next one, please. These are the legislations we have, friends. Currently, the two that you see in blue are the game changers that we are having right now, and also the Right to Education Act 2009. So, Rights of Persons with Disabilities Act 2016 has given them a whole lot of rights, and the beauty is this is synchronized with the UNCRPD, that is United Nations Convention on Rights of Persons with Disabilities. Government of India has synchronized our RPWD, the 2016 Act, to the UNCRPD. That is, whatever is in the UNCRPD, we have aligned our act to that. And I'm proud to say India was one of the earliest countries to ratify UNCRPD, which means we will change our act to fall in line with UNCRPD. So the 1995 act that I mentioned about, that had only 7 disabilities, is replaced with this, with the 2016, aligning it to UNCRPD. Just go on the net, it's in Hindi, it's in English, just see what are all the rights that our persons with disabilities have, pass it on to anybody who see around you who has a disability. So the National Trust Act is another one in the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment that gives guardianship to people with severe disability such as autism, cerebral palsy, intellectual disability, and multiple disability. After the parents, who will take care of my child, was the question the parents raised. So this has come up as an answer to that question, the 1999 Act. And the one that you see as Rehabilitation Council of India Act, please note, this regulates all the rehabilitation professionals' education. So we have a central register in Delhi. Each one of us who qualify there with the special education or speech pathology or community-based rehabilitation or whatever, we do it in an organization recognized by RCI, Rehabilitation Council of India. And when we graduate, we apply and we get a number. Without that number in India, a person cannot practice rehabilitation. Like a medical license number, it's a license number. And all the rehabilitation courses are regulated by Rehabilitation Council of India. And so the requirements in terms of staff, in terms of curriculum to be followed, in terms of infrastructure, everything is prescribed by Rehab Council. So all of us who are in rehabilitation have that number. If you apply for a job and you have done it elsewhere, even if it is abroad, it has to be again what they call accredited into Rehabilitation Council for you to get a job in rehabilitation area. So this is a big move. I'm intentionally telling this because you will connect it when you see the following slides that you are going to see. And Right to Education Act, of course, all of us know that has brought about a big change in our country, making education as a fundamental right. And the recent National Education Policy 2020 that Professor Tilak was mentioning about is linked to RPWD, the first act that I spoke to, so that the rights of persons with disabilities and the national education policy blended together can come up with plan of actions that is appropriate for them. Next one, please, Ruchira ji. Yeah. So here is one study that I would like to talk about. There are two studies that I'm going to talk about. This one study, why I want to share this with you is, this was done, when was it? 2017, as you see in this. Society for the Elimination of Rural Poverty in Andhra Pradesh, when Andhra Pradesh was not yet divided at that point of time. The study was carried out by SERP. SERP has a division for disabilities, and therefore we decided, I was a consultant with them after I completed with my National Institute for the Empowerment of Persons with Intellectual Disabilities. We decided that we will train the local people, because people trained in urban areas tend to settle down in urban areas. They don't tend to go back to the rural areas and work. And therefore, we said we will train community resource persons. And the second point we kept in mind is that this person is going to be himself or herself disabled. So many of them later told us after the training was over that we were shunned in a corner and they all thought we are burdens. But after the training, we have a respect in our community and we are able to do a lot of things. So these were persons with either locomotor disability, or if it is intellectual disability, a parent or sister or somebody they could join. So as you see, we had trained all over Andhra Pradesh. There were pockets. This was a World Bank funded project itself. So 130 women were trained in 5 groups, 25, 30 people in one group. And the program was not continuous, friends. It was 5-day training on screening. Go back to your village, screen, as we have told you. Screening collects a lot of people of suspected person. Then comes assessment that points to what disability, right? So screening they did, they came back. Then we taught them as to where to send them, how to, because they were all 8th class pass or 10th class pass, not highly educated. So they could screen, and we had given them the skills for referral, and we interfaced the hospitals for the health issues and institutes for hearing impairment, vision impairment. All of those interface was done. And then they would do the referrals. And after the entitlements, they also took care to see that the entitlements for these persons with disability they could receive. What do I mean by entitlements? They had a travel concession. If they have a certificate, they had a lot of benefits under that they were able to receive. Even subsistence allowance is given to them. So these ladies and men whom we trained made sure that they had access to those and they got the entitlements. And the third phase, we trained them in basic stimulation, which will not harm, making sure that this is not going to harm the child. If the developments are delayed, certain stimulation exercises, playing with toys, doing things like that are going to help them. So that training, 3 phases, each one had train, work, train, so that they had the real hands-on which we visited. And these people later, as I told you, reported our childhood was not good. We were not treated well. Even now we were not treated well. But after this training, people look up at us. We had connected them to SHG also. So when the self-help groups are linked to them, after World Bank funding stops, sustaining their work has to happen. So they made an arrangement within for some token money that they would receive through the SHG. After Andhra and Telangana divided, I'm not part of it, and I'm sorry, currently I do not know where it stands in Andhra and Telangana, but it was such a wonderful exercise. So the message I'm passing on from this particular study is that let us focus on the local resources who will be able to stay locally and they will be able to help. And the training content. Next one, please. Yeah, so simple that they were able to take it with them. How to identify early? You know, what all can be the risk factors during conception, during pregnancy, during delivery. And most of you will be familiar with this very, very non-invasive APGAR score. 10 points are there. Appearance of the child, as soon as the child is born, it is seen. A for APGAR is the name of the person who got it, and also it's an acronym. A for appearance, does the child look pink or is he blue or yellow? There is a point that you have to note in mind. Each of them have 2 points, total is 10. So A for appearance, P for pulse, G for grimace reflex. If you put your finger near the nose, that the child sneeze or sneeze related behavior does he do. Other A is for activity, is the bilateral movement good in the child, and then the R is respiration. Just look at the child, and then 2 marks. That if the total is 8 and above, you are having a healthy baby born right now. 5 to 7 needs follow up. Child may be at risk, and below 5 needs to be definitely referred. So right at birth, you can suspect things can go wrong and you can help. Again, I'm telling this here because you may take, if a pregnant lady is going to the hospital for delivery, tell them to ask for Apgar. Most of the hospitals, even in PHCs, I see that they write Apgar in the paper nowadays. Ask for Apgar, take the advice if the child has to get the support. And then the other visible signs like birth defects, Down syndrome has specific features, small head, microcephaly, large head, hydrocephalus. These are children who need to be immediately referred, and our CRPs were excellent. The ones whom we trained in the rural area, quick to learn. I've also been teaching at diploma, BEd, MEd levels, but I found these people very quick to learn. One, because they themselves are, some of them are married, they have children, they could relate. And also that they found this very interesting. It was fantastic and it was a great experience. Next one, Ruchiraji. It's just a sample of what was the content, right? And also we taught them to work with the parents, because as soon as the diagnosis is given, parents' first expression is denial. Oh no, all is fine. And they go doctor shopping. Somebody, koi bhi to bolenge na ki tumhari bachchi achhi hai. So somebody will say that all is well. So that they keep on doing the doctor shopping. Then मेरे घर में तो सब लोग ठीक हैं, आपके घर में तो कोई ऐसा रहा, husband and wife, they have the guilt and shame and blame game between them. So that goes on, the family has a problem. And then helplessness started, then they start to, okay, maybe something is wrong, neighborhood child if I see, and then my child I see, I do see a different, helpless, where to go, what to do. And then finally, after some counseling, etc., acceptance. Only after acceptance, what you tell will work in them. If they are in still denial mode, all your therapies are not going to work. So our CRPs are trained in talking to the parents also, telling them these are the reasons why you need to see a doctor. Lot may say all is well, finally, or something is wrong. It is early intervention that helps, right? And even the NEP 2020 talks about preschool years included into the school now. It is not first class onwards, it's preschool onwards that is in NEP 2020 now, the foundational years. So before that, when we identify and then give the support, definitely we reduce the effect of disability if it is going to be there in the child. Next one, please, Ruchira. Yeah, all the photographs you see are from that project where the CRP training. The girl who's helping with the baby is a CRP. Every picture you've been seeing is from that. Yeah, so they train the family members. Another thing we caught on is getting the grandparents. So the grandparents are generally little free at home kind of people, and mother is always loaded. So we said, you can do it, come on. And then they used to be the one who would come for the stimulation exercises and all that. So home-based and center-based training was given. Next one, please. And then all those projects, districts had developed something called neighborhood centers. This is a place where you had some outdoor and indoor activity material equipment, and then details, flyers, little flyers in Telugu on disability related things. And the beauty is, after the school hours are over, children without disability will also come there around 2:33, and children with and without disability together will play in the neighborhood center. So inclusion was very smooth. Inclusion was naturally happening. So it was not only for disabled children. All would come, the Independence Day, all will be together for doing some activities. It's Diwali, it is Christmas, it is New Year. Beautiful, beautiful. So these neighborhood centers really made a natural inclusion. Please see, this is all happening in the rural area, Mehboob Nagar, all these places, Sangareddy, all the different places. And interior Andhra Pradesh, we went into Srikakulam, very many places, Karimnagar, name it, and we have worked there. It was beautiful. So the bottom line or the take-home message here is, let us identify people from within, and also those who wear the shoes know where it pinches. So such people, so their involvement also will be more, and sustainability is very important. Project mode in India, there are so many project reports that we have beautifully done project reports. Now with the technology, they come out very nice. Sustainability. How do we go about for sustaining? So this is one, next one please. This is one that really worked. And this little girl who's in a kind of green uniform is the one with disability taking her sister without a disability to school. Look at that. This is what we want happening. The one with disability, intellectual disability she had, very responsibly, she takes her sister without a disability to the school. So let us not say, oh, person with disability burdens. No, we have to identify where is their skill for contributing. Take it, use it. And we have a fantastic society that is an inclusive society. Next one, please. Yeah, this is the publication of that study, and Prabhakar Garu is Sudhakar Reddy ji, who was the director of the subunit on disability in SERP. He was himself a wheelchair user, but his reach was fantastic. Just with his mobile phone, he had all the districts in his hand and a click, literally on his fingertips, and he was managing the whole thing. Sri Sudhakar Reddy. And Raja Pratap Kumar was the coordinator for all the districts for the CRP training project. And so he contributed in connecting all of them. And he had a way of reaching them that was very convincing in beautiful Telugu. It was, I would call it a very, very wonderful project. And in some places I hear it is being sustained, but I don't have the total detail to share with you. So next one is one study that I shared with you. Next one. Yeah, this is a study that caught the eyes of Ruchira ji, that she had written to me to say, will you talk about it and also relate it to the education policy. So this study, we had Professor Richard Rose, who was with us. I don't know if he's still here. He was the lead for that. And then Mr. Shankar Mattam runs NGO called Sahara. In got disconnected, is it, Ruchira? Is it got disconnected?
No,
Yeah.
it's working.
Yeah, has it come back? No, in between it got disconnected for me, sorry. Yeah, so we four worked on it. So Sahara that they are running was the base from where we worked. In fact, Sahara also, at the request of the district collector of Mehboob Nagar, had done a situation analysis of persons with disabilities, particularly children, in Mehboob Nagar, and actions to be taken, for which Professor Rose was again the lead person. So Mr. Shankar and Professor Rose were here. I don't know if they are still there, but they were with us. So this is a small scale
Yes, I'm
study.
still here,
And
Jayanthi.
oh, okay, Richard. Okay. So you will supplement if I'm missing out anything.
Yes, okay. I should be here for another 20 minutes or so.
Richard. Yeah. So this has certain inclusive education related issues. What is it that is available in urban area that our children are unable to get in rural area, or how are they getting it? This was the main focus. So it was done through a semi-structured interview. We interviewed the participants. Next one, please. Before that, let's just have a look at what is Sahara. So it's a social development organization working for children with special health needs. And they have 12, just like PHC, they call them as PRCs, Primary Rehabilitation Center. They have got electric auto rickshaws that goes to the houses of the children and pick up the children to the center for the therapy and support systems that they require. They also assist with various other, how to get insurance that the children have an entitlement to, or other socio-economic drives of the government, how to access that. So it is, as I told you, it is in Sangareddy, Mehboob and Hyderabad, in this area. And also currently, Mr. Shankar was telling that they have extended in Orissa and other places. Next one, please. This is Sahara. These are the activities. And Sahara also runs a Rehabilitation Council of India cleared courses for early intervention and at B.Ed level. Because it is situated in Sangareddy district, kind of a rural area, it is expected, we are hoping, first batch is going on now, we are hoping that those who get qualified from these this center are likely to work in rural areas. See, you will be seeing my anxiety about rural people working in rural area and not moving on to urban area, it is purposefully lost. So here they have started these courses, and hopefully people who get qualified here continue to work in rural areas. So this is about Sahara, who are partners for this study. Next one, please. Yeah, so we had the research questions that what are all the facilities? We wanted to find answers to this. What is the support system available for families who have children with disability in metropolitan city of Hyderabad? Do such families have similar equal support in Sangareddy also? So we took 5 schools in both the places, in 5 schools each, Hyderabad and Sangareddy. We had 54 participants. It was interview, as you had seen earlier, and that included regular teachers, special teachers, support staff. Aya and auto driver also was interviewed, in fact. Parents, children with disabilities and their peer group, all were included for the study. And in the results, we interviewed them, took time to get the responses, then coded all the, transcribed the interview data, coded them, and then found the themes, of responses that we got to answer the research questions. I'm only putting down here the key salient findings. So Metro City had more access to special education in special schools. Rural areas did not have that many special schools as Hyderabad city has the special schools. Obviously, right, it has not yet penetrated. The system has not yet penetrated into rural areas to give the children what they deserve to get. Second thing we found in both places is the willingness on the part of the professionals to support the education and social welfare needs of children with special needs and their families in both places. But they didn't have the know-how, the regular teachers and the others. They didn't know how to do. We want to do. We have nothing against children with disability in our school, but we don't know what to do with them. So this was kind of responses that came repeatedly, and a very important point to note. And then disparity exists between the availability of professional support services to families and children living in rural area and in the greater metro cities, you see. So definitely more facilities in metro city, just as medical, this is, or even higher education, it falls in line for education of children with disability also, that metro city was better equipped. The lack of opportunity for training, those teachers who are working in the rural area did not have enough opportunity to update themselves or have in-service training programs and things like that so that they could do a better job. Rehabilitation Council of India has what is called CRE, Continuing Rehabilitation Education. So persons who are licensed with the RCI, they have to have some 100 points, or each of the CRE will give you points. So 100 points to renew your license, otherwise the license will lapse. They have a system like that. So now the rural special educators are also getting updated, not yet enough. I won't say it's a happy situation, but it is a positive sign that a lot of good things are happening in terms of reaching out to our rural counterparts. Another important point for us to note, peer group showed a lot of natural support. When you ask the peer group, they said, oh, he's nice, he's very friendly with children. Said he's very slow to write, so we will write his homework on the board in his notebook also after we finish writing on our notebooks. No barriers. Friends, we have to take advantage of this before the children develop barriers. Inclusion has to happen smoothly and should be appreciated, right? So even the children with disabilities were happy with their peer group. I don't think there was any complaint on I'm being teased and bullied. They were happy. My friends are good. I share pencil with them. That kind of stuff. Only in the interview it emerged. So we have to take advantage of getting our children sensitized. So future generation, there is nothing like segregation inclusion, but there is a natural inclusion right from childhood in children. And the parents in the rural areas were happy that their child is accepted in a regular school. Just that acceptance in a school was making them happy. Whereas in the urban city, the parents said, that's not adequate, this is not adequate, my child is not taught well, maybe I should shift my child to the special school. So they had their expectations also high and the demands were also, naturally, I'm not blaming them, but they know what to ask for. Whereas the rural parents were just happy that my child is accepted and he is going to school. So they should be better aware that the child needs to get what he deserves to get. Yeah, and some urban parents preferred the special schools to regular school, particularly for children with autism spectrum disorders and all. They said they thought regular school teachers are not able to manage them. This was the study that got published in the MDPI, in the educational sciences. So, Richard, you want to add something? Richard?
Yes, I think, Jayanthi, I think you've given an excellent presentation there, which makes clear many of the issues that came out. I think there are a couple of points I would just emphasize. The first is that there's no lack of willingness on the part of people in the communities that we explored and other communities in India where I've been privileged to work. There's certainly no lack of willingness to move this agenda forward. There is a huge commitment to ensuring the rights of children with disabilities wherever I go. But the obstacles that I see are similar to those I see in other countries. One of them is perhaps a lack of coordination across the various services. There's still a little disparity between education, health, and social welfare, and also in some instances a lack of coordination between NGO and government bodies. And that sometimes means that although those services are there and they're willing to provide the provision, they sometimes stumble over one another occasionally in their efforts to make provision. It's undoubtedly true, as you've emphasized too, that what we see is a significant difference between those services available in urban and rural environments. And again, this is true in other parts of the world as well. And one of the strengths, it seems to me, in what we saw in Mahabubnagar was the fact that services were taken to families, and seemingly simple things like the provision of transport to enable parents from quite poor communities to be transported to meet with professionals and for their children to be taken to the day centres was absolutely critical for the kind of provision that was being provided. And finally, I would say we shouldn't assume that everybody has the same level of knowledge and understanding either about the difficulties faced by children or the facilities that are available. In some instances, particularly for families I felt in rural communities, there is support available through therapeutic services, and we saw some excellent physiotherapy, for instance, being provided. But there are families who don't know those systems exist. And that, again, is a kind of breakdown in communication, where possibly communication in the urban environment, certainly in metropolitan cities like Hyderabad, is more easily managed than it is in the rural communities. And there's some of the issues that I think need to be confronted if progress is going to be made sufficiently in this area. And going back to the earlier presentation as well, the excellent presentation of the impact on COVID, I think we're all aware that that has put these situations back further and has caused increased disruption. And I would anticipate that in the next period, there's going to be a considerable debate about how resources are utilised in order to ensure that children with disabilities are not left behind as the problems that occurred for those who have no disabilities were exacerbated through the COVID pandemic. So thank you, Jayanthi, for your excellent presentation.
Ruchira, there is a little more, 2 more slides in that. Let me just finish with it, otherwise it won't close. Yeah, so these two studies in the backdrop, the national education policy, particularly on disability, clearly highlights the same opportunities should be given to children with disabilities also, and inclusion and equal participation of children with disabilities everywhere. The numbers you see on the sides are in the policy itself. Yeah, so it should. The policy is completely in consonant with the RPWD Act that we saw earlier, we spoke about, right? So whatever is mentioned in the RPWD Act as the rights of persons with disabilities in terms of education, national policy on education agrees to that. So we need to see both of them together to come up with a plan of action for them in their respective area, particularly we are now talking about the rural areas and recruitment of special educators. Friends, I'd like to share with you recently, 2 months back, there was a Supreme Court ruling that every regular school must have special educators employed. The ratio of 10 children, primary schools, 10 children, 1 teacher, secondary school, 12 children, 1 teacher. It's a Supreme Court ruling and the state governments sent their consensus. I was part of that preparation of responding to Supreme Court's queries, and so I know it has happened. So soon we will have special educators recruited in rural schools also. What we have seen here that we have not had special educators. Regular teachers are accepting the children for the want of any other facility in the rural areas, right? So this is another thing. And then recruitment of special educators with cross disability training. So more than 1 disability training so that in regular schools they'll be able to work. And then we have barrier-free environment, ramps in the school, water supply in the toilets, all that need to be ensured, which is happening. Rural schools are having. Next one, please. Appropriate technology-based tools. Technology has done a big revolution in communication of persons with disabilities. Deaf people are able to use a telephone. In my childhood, could I have imagined a deaf person using a telephone? But today, the SMS and WhatsApp and all that, amazing. So make the best use of it. Earlier, we heard that the rural areas are also getting technology, but not adequate. They have a computer, they don't have the data or the Wi-Fi connection. How will the children benefit from it? You see, so we need to kind of work a little more focused. And then the school, these are all in the NEP. And then the last point, 6.12 that you're seeing, all children need not be studying only in regular schools. They can go to special school, and they can also adopt home-based education. So the teacher goes to the house of the child if he's non-ambulatory and he's unable to move and nobody can bring him to school. Transport is an issue. So this is another one that NEP is endorsing. Education must happen. It is not where that is important, but it should happen for children with disabilities. Next one, most likely the final one. Yeah, so to close, these are the things in rural areas we need to focus: accessibility, addressing the attitudinal and physical barriers, awareness about the rights and entitlement, training the trainers, training institutes of professionals in urban districts to have quotas for students from rural areas, training institute like Sahara to run only in the rural areas, and social audit and accountability. Let people be aware, let people ask questions is very important. And finally, local traditions and lifestyle should be imbibed in the curriculum rather than teaching something unconnected for them. So anything that has been done in project mode, work towards sustainability when the project is still on, so that it has an effect and meaning. And that's it, I think. See, next one. Thank you so much. Thank you. Any queries, we will talk later. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Jayanthi. Actually, it's very interesting, and I have a few queries myself, but let us reserve it for the end of the presentation. We will move on to Subhendu Bhattacharjee. Subhendu, am I audible to you?
You are audible, Ruchira.
Yes. So, without much delay, I would like to move on to your presentation. So, over to you, Subhendu.
It's a very good presentation I have heard from Ms. Jayanthi Narayan and Sir B.G. Tilak. So, and they have covered actually everything, most of the disability and the macro data of education, the COVID situation and children. But here I would like to focus on the topic which was given to us by Madam Ruchira, evidence, policy and action. But at the outset, I would like to say that Honorable Director General NIRD has covered most of the programs of the Government of India. So with this, I want to start my presentation. One minute, I'm trying to present. Yes. It can be seen, Ruchira? No. Is it visible, Ruchira?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Please carry on.
Okay. So I want to start my presentation from a story which I was listening today from my Kashmiri colleagues. They said they have a good program called Back to Village. This is the only state where this program has been launched by the central government after it has become union territory, where all the officers are going to villages, they're discussing with the communities and other stakeholders and trying to solve the problems. So when they're interacting with the parents, teachers, panchayat members and other village stakeholders, they're coming to know many issues pertaining to education, like there is some problems in midday meals, there is some problems in quality education, there are absentee of teachers, there are not enough teachers, library is not functioning. So with the active initiative of the government and community interface, these are being solved. So this is a very good example of where government of India is coming with the programs, and since there is no state legislature at the moment right now, government officers are taking cognizance of the complaints when they're going to villages and staying with the people, and then they are solving the problem. So it is very good problem coming to problem solving method which can be good model. And as you know, at the moment, if you look at the Panchayat system of Jammu and Kashmir, it is functioning much better way because it is getting direct grants of the government of India, and they have educated resources as well as workers. At the same time, they have support from the state machineries, which can be a good example where Panchayat administration and community are joining together to ensure accessibility to school. At the same time, achieving quality of education for the children. Oh, it's not moving, Ruchira.
Can you share the full screen from your end instead of?
I'm trying to do.
Or if you share the presentation with me, I can share it from my end, whatever works.
Okay. Now it is coming in the full screen.
No, we can see the PPT file. So if you move it there, we will be able to see. But I can't see the full screen presentation.
I'm trying to. फुल स्क्रीन कर इसको बताइए ये कहाँ से आया डू इट फुल स्क्रीन अच्छा इस प्रेजेंटेशन मोड ना ये ना हाँ is it coming now no it's the movie sorry I'm just sending it to you Ruchira
yeah okay sure
okay. Not movie. Stop sharing. Yeah. PPT का PPT तुम खोल के अभी खोला है ना हमने PPT से जाओ तो म्यूट कर दे अपना PPT
While we wait for Subhendu to send his slides and move forward with the presentation, I see that there is one question at the chat window by Gaurav Dave. He's asking, does NEP 2020 have policy to hire teachers for imparting vocational education that are national skill qualification framework aligned? Does any of our panelists want to take it up and respond while we sort it out with Subhendu?
The NIEPA, can I say that?
Please.
The NIEPA promises to recruit teachers in all levels of education from primary to higher levels, including in vocational education and technical schools. And the qualifications, of course, are to be specified, but they will be aligned with the national qualifications framework that's being developed. That's already developed, in fact. So there is a favorable policy statement saying that teachers will be recruited, qualified teachers will be recruited in every level and every type of education. That's a very clear promise that's made.
Right. I think that answers Gaurav's question. I'm still waiting for Subhendu to send his slides to me. So as soon as he sends it, I'll start the presentation. Oh, I think he's presenting from his end.
see Ruchira?
I can see you are presenting, but I can't see the slide. Yeah, now it's visible. Right. Perfect.
So what I said, sorry, I've lost that track. So Professor Tilak has rightly vividly explained the COVID situation, what is the learning loss and learning gaps, which I do not like to enter, because US data is showing clearly to us that number of schools have come down. If you look at the US data of last 3 years, so which there I'm not going into right now, but I'm saying India is 70% rural population, and 84% total schools are in rural areas, and 70% students are also from rural areas, and 73% teachers are also working in the rural areas if you go with the UDAS data. And since independence, our focus has been for inclusive education, especially for the rural children, and 5-year planning planning was started. And education, if you look at the Kotari Commission and the national education policy of 1986, all the policy in 2020 national education policy all have laid emphasis towards quality rural education. I will come later. So here I would say that agriculture is one of the most important sectors in India. In 21-22, it contributed 19% of the country's gross value added. And all the rural workers, if you see that 50% countries work and 72% rural workers are engaged in agriculture and allied activities. And small and marginal farmers comprise of biggest amount, holding 86% of land and 47% of the total operated area of farming. Thus, improving rural education, the agriculture sector can grow a lot with new technologies and knowledge, where increasingly agriculture sector is facing distress. And what Director General has said that gross domestic product, GDP sharing from the agriculture sector is coming down. So it's a great concern if you want to feed the entire population and put them in creative engagement for the development of the society. So if you look at as I said, if you look at the policies, Kotari Commission, the National Education Policies and all, so we started with non-formal education scheme, so that we can, all students that time, number of schools were not available to cater to all the children. So we started non-formal education so that we could bridge the gap between these students who are getting formal education, and through non-formal we're trying to bring them to the mainstream education. Then we started with Operation Blackboard in 1987. After 1986 education policy, and the purpose was to ensure quality education with a special focus in the rural area. And you could remember that this new education policy also talked about starting Navodaya Vidyalaya. And today, if you look at the students who are coming from Navodaya Vidyalaya, definitely their quality education wise they're much better to other government schools. Everybody can vouch it for looking at the quality of output these students of Navodaya Vidyalayas are giving. Then if you look at there is a special program called Mahila Shamika, and it was started in 1989, aimed at education for women's equality in pursuance of the goals of the new education policy in 1986. The program emphasized on education as an agent of change in the status of women, and still now you can see this Mahila Shamika program is running very, very good way in Uttar Pradesh and other North Indian states. Then you could remember 1994 DPEP program was started. DPEP program was started to operationalize the strategies to achieve universal elementary education at the district level with special focus on rural areas. Educational program were decentralized with the involvement of panchayat. And then we could see that the role of panchayat had increased that time in monitoring the schools. It emphasized on decentralized management, community mobilization, because earlier schools, teachers were not accountable to the community, but that DPEP program brought the component of education and community mobilization, district-specific planning, micro-planning, based on contextual and research-based inputs available to each district. And the nutrition program was started that time because it was felt that mostly children are coming hungry to school. So to retain them in school and to ensure their nutrition, because without nutrition they cannot absorb education, cannot contribute in a great way to society. So nutrition component was brought in during that time. And the Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, if you look back to this century, 2001, and this Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan was launched in 2001 to provide useful and quality elementary education to all children in the 6 to 14 years of age, and the target was kept by 2010 as per the Millennium Development Goals. And the scheme is an effort to then recognize the need of improving the performance of the school system and to provide community-owned quality elementary education as a mission. The first time it was taken as a mission mode, although it was part of our constitution since at the beginning in the Article 45. The school also embraces building gender and social gaps existing in the country. And as I said, community mobilization, which was started from DPP program, it was given more emphasis in Sarva Shiksha Abhiyan, and with the assistance of some NGOs and other philanthropies. And the popular among these schemes are, and you can see that time Luxembourg, Shiksha Karmi projects, all small schemes were started in different states to include all the children in the arena of education. And these schemes were started to universalize primary education and deliver quality education in the remote rural villages. Then if you look at the constitution, as I said, constitutional amendment was brought in 2001 and the act was made in 2009 to cover children 6 to 14 by giving them rights under Article 21, earlier which was part of directive principle of state policy under Article 45. And the right to education laid down criteria, number of teachers, infrastructure, everything. So I do not want to discuss everything here. So because time is too short and it's a long meeting. So if you look at the correlation between educational policies and rural development, so 73rd Amendment, which was brought in 1993, it's a landmark in Indian context because Panchayat local government was given responsibilities. Panchayat like education, including primary and secondary schools, adult and non-formal education, maintaining libraries, and women and child development under 29 subjects, which was entrusted to the Panchayat under 73 Amendment. And the role of Panchayat was defined in the area of education, promoting awareness on rights of children under RTE Act 2009, promoting comprehensive participatory education plan to improve basic physical school facilities, social environment, child assessment, promoting plans to improve infrastructure for Anganwadis because Anganwadi buildings are not in good shape, monitoring of quality education through participation of Panchayat members and parents and communities, monitoring rates and reasons of school dropouts for girls as boys for further action. Facilitate cross access to entitlement like midday meals, school uniforms, and other facilities. Facilitating collaboration with the line department to fill vacant teacher posts. Panchayat played a very vital role in reaching out to the education department if there is any vacancy of teachers, there are school building issues, infrastructural issues. So this way, the 73rd Amendment empowered Panchayat to do all this work in the arena of education. Now I would like to discuss about Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan and National Education Policy 2020. How do they contribute to rural development? Samagra Shiksha Abhiyan, effective from 2018-19, focused on improvement of school infrastructure and quality of education in all states and union territories, including rural areas, through upgradation of school. And now government has started merging of school, where some are saying it's a closure of school. So at the moment, I don't want to get into debate of whether it's a merger or closure, because government is saying merger is being done to have maximum number of teachers and to provide quality education. So this is a debatable topic, which I don't want to discuss it here. I want to leave it to audience to decide. And strengthening of infrastructure of existing schools, provisioning of composite school grants to every school for providing conclusive learning environment, providing grants for librarians, sports and physical activities, so that students are not only confined to their bookish knowledge, they get into life skill education, and they get confidence to stand in life. And in-service training of teachers and school heads, which is a very missing point till now. Conducting achievement surveys at state and national level. You can see Government of India has come out with the performance grading index of each district in July, and recently government has come out with the national achievement survey also on the learning outcome, which we have not done analysis till now. It is in the process. And of course, performance grading index, we have done it, where government has identified each district, how they are performing in terms of infrastructure and other facilities in schools. And the supporting Rashtriya Abhishkar Abhijan to inculcate scientific, curiosity among children. And as Tilak sir said, there is huge digital divide between urban and rural. Information communication technology and digital initiatives, these are to be started under Sarva-Samagra Shiksha Abhijan. And the emphasis has been given the 21st century skill called School Leadership Development Program, remedial teacher for academically weaker students, in special learning center. Even those who have faced learning loss during COVID time, government is a scheme called special learning centers to provide education to these weaker sections of students. And the another scheme providing support to Padhe Bharat, Bhare Bharat, etc. These are the schemes, these are the provisions which have been laid down in Samagra Shiksha Abhijan. The 2020 outlined the vision of new education system of India, replacing the previous national policy on education 1986. Yeah, Director General at the outset very said that infrastructure we have done lots of development, but quality has still to be achieved. Therefore, you can see all the students are coming out from the schools, colleges, not confident that they will be able to perform and they will be able to contribute, and therefore you can see lots of migration happen. In rural area, they come to urban area and get into informal sector. And the biggest example has been when first COVID lockdown started, you could see a lot of migration was happening from urban to rural area. So therefore, if you do not emphasize on quality education, children to come to urban area, in urban will be getting informal. But I'm saying informal sector is bad, but they are, look at the urban class and what they are living condition is very bad. So that way they are not able to contribute what is expected from them in the national building. So the vision of the policy is to build an education system rooted in Indian ethos that contributes directly to transforming India by providing high quality education to all. The various provisions that are being mentioned in the NEP 2020 are applicable and important for all children, including ones from the rural background and from the rural most remote area and the last child. There are a lot of initiative and provision in NEP 2020 which are not only empowering for the children of the rural background, but also important for them to nurture their latent skills so that they can live a dignified life as an adult. Indirectly, certain provisions like incorporating digital education, focus on skill building, leadership building would help the children from the rural background to contribute in community building and work hand in hand with the local government to bring about a positive change in the society. So these are the some of the important provisions, because if you in the rural area, early child care education is very not in a good shape. So focus has been on early child care education and foundational literacy and numeracy, ensuring universal access to all levels of school education and preventing dropouts, making learning holistic, integrated, enjoyable, and engaging through activities, different activities, and capacity building of teachers. It has been seen that what Tilak sir also said, in urban area teachers are getting more exposure, more training, but in terms of training as a rural area, it is still a concern area. So this NEP 2020 has given focus to that, making education equitable and inclusive for all children, including challenged children. Standard setting of accreditation for school education. It is not any per any kind of school will come up. There should be standard setting and accreditation system, incorporation of pedagogically sound teaching and learning practices that are child friendly, and use of technology in teaching and learning assessment is a supplementary. It is not to substitute the school education. With the introduction of the 3-language policy, children from the rural background would get an opportunity to study and learn in their own regional languages. It's a good step. Otherwise, what we have seen, the rural children generally do not, get exposures and do not get enough materials, and they do not feel confidence when they compare to children who are coming from, English medium background. So this education policy has given lots of importance to mother tongue, and mother tongue is a very good medium to learn without getting bogged down because of these English languages. So all of the above mentioned provision in NEP 2020 are meant to create an equitable and inclusive education ecosystem, irrespective of geography, and reaching to last child. Especially the adoption of technology in teaching and learning process is a welcome step in addressing the existing digital divide. And capacity building of teacher is also another very good step. Right? Then another good thing which has come out, the effort to be made to make Olympiads and other competition available to rural areas in regional language. Now Olympiad test done only in urban area, and children are mostly participating from English medium backgrounds. So these are taken to rural area in regional languages to ensure widespread participation, to ensure that outstanding students enter the teaching profession. Nowadays, mostly, outstanding students are not coming into teaching profession, and not mostly for rural areas. A large number of merit-based scholarships shall be instituted across the country for study. Financial employment in their local areas after successful completion of their BA program. Take up teaching in rural areas, especially in areas that are currently facing acute shortage of quality teacher. This is the fact that in the remote area, no teacher wants to go and teach. It's a huge challenge. A key incentive for teaching in rural areas will be provision of local housing near or on the school premises, or increased housing allowances. Because mostly teachers are coming from the urban area, are teaching and imparting education to children. Therefore, they cannot meet the compulsory time frame in the school. So government is trying to reduce that part also. A systematic arrangement shall be created to provide requisite support to students from rural background, including hostel facilities as needed. You can see the PMC program has been started in all tribal blocks. So other kind of special schools are being started in each block, so that these schools will be having hostel facilities, so that remote children can come, stay, and take quality education. Central and state governments shall take steps to ensure books are made accessible, because it's a huge challenge. Every year books reaches to school after 6 months of the academic session started. It's a serious concern in the rural area. So these policies that try to address this also. As I said, all these things will be captured by the US system of data. Anything?
Yes, we only have 15 more minutes left for the program, and we want to squeeze in a little interaction. So please manage the presentation accordingly.
I'm trying to strengthening this girls to prevent drop out from school along with ensuring health and hygiene, enhance allocation for libraries, the provision of books in regional languages, resource allocation for computer internet facilities in school, provision of garden, so children need food, and of funds from Pradhan Mantri Sadak Yojana and other road connectivity, the girls can go to school, because yes, school cannot be in a neighborhood area as per the government norms. So better vocational education, enhanced allocation for teachers training, promoting crop diversification, so that the unfavorable weather condition, active involvement of district-based other stakeholders, as I say, like Kashmir back to village program. Jila Parishad must ensure safety and security of girls, so there better implementation of schemes which are there in Mission Balo. To to ensure this is monitoring of the schools and planning. Thank you, madam. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Subhendu. I would request our panelists to please open their videos now because we want to start the interaction soon. Professor Tilak, Professor Jayanthi, and Subhendu, all three of you. And I am going to let the participants unmute themselves now. So we will start the interaction session. But before we move on to the interaction with our participants here, as I had told you earlier, that since this is a roundtable setting, if there is any comment from one speaker to the another, we would like to first take it and then open the panel, the interaction panel.
Professor Tilak's presentation was excellent in terms of completely walking us through the COVID and what is the requirement in terms of education. The vision that he expressed was amazing. It also reminds us how much we need to do. Okay, we have managed the bad situation. Now they say there is one more coming, all that is happening. But I just want to place on record, it was a fantastic session. And that of Sri Subhendu ji was also very, very interesting, connecting whatever is in the policy to the reality that he was trying to say, what are all the possibilities that we could do. I'm glad I'm here to listen to the esteemed speakers, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Narayan.
Thank you so much, Professor Narayan and Subhendu. Yeah, there is something.
So I'd like to, Professor Tilak, actually I have read his lot of writings. So he's my guru actually, I've never met him, but I have read him a lot. So his presentation was excellent. He has covered the data and COVID situation, running laws, digital divide, whatnot. He has given complete picture of the education scenario of the country. So thank you so much, sir. And Madam Jayanthi Narayan has covered this issues of special children and what kind of issues they are facing, and she has brought UN framework and national law and other things, and she has taken the things to the ground. It is very interesting, ma'am. I was reading through and listening to you. It is very enriching. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you so much, Subhendu, for your comments. Before I open the panel, I have one question to Professor Jayanthi, and then I'll probably move on. And my question is, why Andhra Pradesh, Professor Jayanthi? Why Andhra Pradesh? Because when you say that if something succeeds at project level, government should take it up and scale it up. Is Andhra Pradesh the right state to begin with? Because the challenges in the northern states, at least.
We need it all over. No. We need it all over India. I live in Andhra Pradesh. I live in Hyderabad, and when I tend to work with this rural area, I've been working with, and when they called me to work, I joined them and worked. We have had projects in northeastern states when I was with the NIMH, when I was working at the NIMH. We have had projects in the northeastern states. Today, if there was time, I was going to share our experience with the Thoothukudi in Tamil Nadu, which is a coastal area with fishermen. What kind of experience? Very different from what we see in urban areas. It was learning for myself also. The fishermen community, how things are so different for them. For lack of time, I have not taken it up to speak of. But yes, National Institute I was working for. Therefore, whole country is our responsibility. These two papers have come after my retirement. And since I am in Hyderabad, and it was on Secunderabad, Andhra and Telangana, as well as the second paper with Telangana and Hyderabad. And the agencies, Professor, since I'm working with Northampton University, Professor Richard Rose visits India on various occasions, and so this was one of the projects we took up at Hyderabad. And yes, definitely it is all over India. We have examples of all over India what all we have done, but today it's not adequate time to share.
No, definitely. Thank you. We'll have more of that maybe in the future programs. And
every child in our country is important for us. Every nook and corner of the country we should be working.
No, if
Tribal
resource
belt,
permits,
we
we
have different experience. Coastal area, we
mode, not in an online mode, and we'll be able to have a more detailed discussion.
yeah,
I call
some
you
other
back,
time. Yes, yes.
so please unmute yourself and ask. Partha, you can unmute yourself straight away.
Can I ask or anybody there?
I will unmute everyone, but you can
Okay.
start and then I'll go on.
Actually, I have an observation come question to both Professor Tilak and Madam. We discussed about this learning loss, but I don't see enough social dialogue on learning loss in India or in other developing countries. And don't you think we need to collect nationwide data? How much we have lost? What is the nature? What is the quantum of this learning loss? And what kind of national level strategy we need to address recouping or reviving this learning loss and all that. And maybe we should also factor in this learning loss while allocating budget in the next few years. So what are your opinions and what kind of narrative discourse going on in developed countries, if Madam can briefly reflect on that?
We'll start with Professor Tilak and then move on to Professor Jayanthi's response.
Thank you very much. I think the magnitude of learning loss is still to be ascertained very clearly. What we have some preliminary estimates, and but I do not have really exact details of how those losses were estimated. But there is no reason to doubt those estimates. But I think we need to really have a robust method and also understand the magnitude of it. It's immense. And as I said, the problem is still not over. Perhaps the loss is really much more than what could be understood now, as of now. And certainly there should be really good strategies of how to address this particular problem. And so far we have not done really very much, but except, as I said, figuratively, some quick reactions of staggering the classes and having more extra hours of teaching, etc. But that's not really sufficient to address the problem. In fact, I said to have extra classes, etc., for young children really may not be really very good method of recovering the losses. We need to have really very serious strategies of how to tackle this problem in the shortest possible time. But I think we should also understand the shortest possible time is not really very, very short. We should do that. I also find another question on in the chat box. Okay, can I take it up? It says I think while the question is very specific with respect to use of technology and the telecom policy, I agree in principle. There is a need for coordination and proper linking of different policies: the education policy, NIEPA policy, the telecom policy, industrial policy, employment policy, etc. in general. And that's one of the important problems that we have. We do almost every policy independent of other sectors. The point that was highlighted by, I think, some Jaspal Singh is very valid, in the sense that the NIEPA says the use of technology for the improvement of quality of education. At least I think to some extent it's quite possible. But the point that was raised is the telecom industry policy does not refer to that, saying that you provide some technical support to the education sector, the schools, etc. I think there is need for coordination between the different ministries on this. But I also am hopeful that slowly it will emerge. Still, the problem is there. The recommendation came recently. The NEFT, National Educational Technology Forum, that's already constituted on the basis of the recommendation of the NEP, will work on some of these details and making it much more integrated, an integrated program with integrated approach.
Thank you, Professor Tilak. On to Professor Jayanthi.
Yeah, so your question on the global picture and where we are. I'm very proud of my country. So my Western countries definitely have less population, more space to live, single language, coast to coast. United States, you speak single language. UK, everywhere you speak single language. And they're much more, richer than us with less population, and India having this population as one thing which is a challenge to address everybody, and socio religious, geographical, linguistic variation, we are able to move forward very beautifully. I mean, from early years. For instance, if you take disability itself, India never had segregation of people with disabilities into institutions and later get them out of the institutions into the society, call it as integration, inclusion, mainstreaming. These terms are unnecessary for us because a person with disability always lived with his family. However, poor resources they have, they never took away the child from the family to put in resource. We did not do the mistake which other countries did. So this is one point we should remember. And second thing I find, comparing to the Western countries, what we take, yes, they are faster with the newer development, good research. We are a little slow with, you spoke about data. I'm very happy about it, Bhattacharjee, that we need to have more documentation and publications, which the other countries do. We learn from it. We are very happy and I would say complacent with the work that we do. We are doing it, and the children are happy, parents are happy. Yay, I am happy. That is not adequate. We need to have a lot of research, publication, and think globally, work locally. This is very, very important. Every area has its own specialty. Like I told you, coastal area work was very different from tribal area. Tribal area work was very different from Andhra Pradesh rural to Madhya Pradesh rural areas, you see. So locally what is appropriate, try and do that. And I go with you, strongly underline it on having the right data, so we'll also be able to point the learning loss where it happens. Now we are assuming, we are not able to say clearly this is what is happening, right? But knowing the local pulse, the way they live, and blend whatever education we want to give into that will be more effective than trying to fit a square peg in a round hole, honestly. Am I answering your question? Yeah, okay.
Thank you, Professor Jayanthi. So now I have given the unmuting rights to all participants. I see Samir Jamatia's hand raised. So kindly unmute yourself and ask your question. This is to all other participants. One by one, you can unmute.
Thank you for everyone, but I am so far from everyone, from Tripura. So, if we come, I'm invite to everyone. Please, there. Madam told me the reason why is the language. That is the very true. I'm the example from the on my base. I am a tribe of the Tripura community tribal, but another tribe has the village level. No network, no connectivity, no success of. So if you communicate the people to people by our student, our coursing, so there are a lot of people issue coming to the language barrier and interest for the, and that is that kind of the come. And another one, so here the interest for the own local material based study. I am as example for the Bali Green School Bali. There are a lot of there is a site of the Green School Bali. I'm visited. They are working on 2009. They are visited and their student for loved abroad from coming and studies their children. But our Indian style very very poor system. So I'm suffer. I'm also suffer from the, if we go to the study for the Delhi, in Agartala to the Delhi, we need this 10 days maximum for by train, by bus, by journey. So that is the issue for the our side for the northeastern part. So that is the issue, very issue for the logistic, and then the study material. We have no introduced the our rural based the study material. So like the I have the study for the in China bamboo technology, but we have noticed the available the raw material. No introduce the class level the, but you see the Chinese all people they are Hangzhou province. This primary level introduce the what is the bamboo raw material. The is the level of study for the we have primary level the bamboo study for the primary level from nursery level, then the upper level then. But we have the equivalence to the study for the, we have pass out the class 10, then we study for the Chinese level of the class nursery level, the courses. So that is the mentality we have. So ma'am, you are the, please the put up your there's called or the suggestion by any query that I'm not questioning. This is the my experience. So rural means then
Can I
very
answer?
unique. So then
Please. Thank you, Samir. Thank you so much.
See, I may respond to him. Yeah.
Yes, please.
In our institute where I work, the National Institute for the Empowerment of Persons with Intellectual Disabilities, we have all the material related to intellectual disability that we prepare are made into all the northeastern languages also. For Tripura, we do Bengali only because that goes, I think. Otherwise, that other languages in different northeastern states, the material we translate so that the parents and professionals will be able to use. We have visited and conducted workshops in having the government and NGOs and the private practitioners together so that what we leave behind is sustained, and we used to follow up. Definitely in Tripura also it is continuing to happen because Government of India has this rule that every ministry has to spend 10% of its budget on but things are getting better than before. Already you would have seen roadways are better, airline connections are better. Only Guwahati we used to fly and then go on road. Now we have so many airports in the northeastern states, right? So things are improving, and surely children, all children, including those with disabilities, will have access to education the way you want. But you are right in saying, look at our needs, ask us what we want, and give us what is right, rather than, again, I say, fitting a square peg in a round hole. Yeah, I agree with you.
Can we have Sharad asking the question? Sharad Tripathi.
Namaskaram to everybody. This is Sharad Tripathi from Sindhak Nehru Yuva Kendra, New Delhi office. So myself is a person with disability, visual challenge. So my question is that I can see there is a big gap and separation in education in terms of infrastructure. We have like 4 or 5 categories of school, like state-owned school, panchayat-owned school, and a school with the luxuries and the Kendriya Vidyalayas and some private schools of the urban area. I think until and unless this gap is not covered, nothing can be done. So the evidence made by the professors all are evidentially that's showing this gap is because of this infrastructure and this set of school in separation. So do you think the NIEPA will address this problem in our country particularly? Thank you very much to all the professors for presenting very nicely.
Thank you, Sharad. Any of the panelists would like to take it up?
I think NEP should and NEP will. There are so many plan of actions happening, Tripathi ji, already. I talk only for disabilities, that subsection that I've taken out. And we started to already have programs taking out from NEP what should be done, particularly that subsection where give respect to the local traditions and make sure children get what is their local tradition and align the education to that. That is already happening. There are committees working on it. I am aware of that. Hopefully, we'll have what you are asking for. Yeah.
Just to add what
Subhendu, can we have your...
NEP has given very lofty dreams. We hope that it will be implemented later in spring. And all these things might be addressed by 2040. That is the hope we have.
Yes. So since there are no further questions in the chat box and we are well past our designated time, I would like to now conclude the program. I see that there are no hand raised as well, and neither in the chat box. Professor Tilak, I see, has joined again. He was dropped for a short time. I would like to know if Professor Tilak has anything to add to Sharad's question. He is asking whether NEP has any provisions to address the gap that is there in terms of fees and inclusion in education. Kindly unmute, sir.
Dr. Jayanthi Narayan is the best person to answer this question, and she has already done
She
it.
has addressed. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, I have nothing to add.
Okay. So let us then conclude the program today, because I don't see any other question as well. And of course, we are going to share all the contact and the papers that have been shared today. We regularly share it with our participants. So all these papers that our panelists referred to, we'll share it with you. And if you want to contact them by yourself, you will also be able to do that. The contact details are right there. So we, on behalf of National Institute of Rural Development and Panchayati Raj, and on behalf of all our participants, I would really like to thank Professor Jandhyala Tilak, Professor Jayanthi Narayan, and Subhendu Bhattacharjee for joining us today and engaging in this very interesting discussion. For the context that why we are doing these programs, we are kind of discussing a possibility of developing a rural development policy now. And the Government of India, Minister of Rural Development in particular, is very interested to develop an RD policy in the future. So we hope that these discussions that we are doing will kind of contribute to the RD policy as well. And also we are planning to bring out a handbook of RD policy as the proceeding of these roundtable discussions. So when that is being finalized, I'll again reach out to you, and I hope that you will be with us in this journey of reaching RD policy. So I would really thank you and thank all our participants for being here. And Dr. Partha, if you have anything to add to the closing remark, please do it now, or else we can close.
We can close it.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
everyone.
And thank you so much. Please stay tuned. We are going to regularly send you our webinar schedules, etc. And we would like to tell you that the roundtable discussions are actually coming to a close this next month or by next 2 months, because these are at the advanced stage. We propose to do 14 or 16 webinars. We have already done 12. So it will soon close, and after that we will start discussing about the RD policy, etc. So with that, I would take your leave today. And good evening to people who are here. Good morning to people who are not here and for joining us from other time zones. And see you in the next program. Thank you very much. Thank you, Professor.
I just want to add, thank you very much. I just want to add that do at the point of convergence of government agencies and departments in the national education policy, because unless there is a convergence of departments, nothing is going to change. Because the policy will say something, but the department will do anything. So every department must have the inclusiveness of the education policy. Only then we can have a transformation. That's the real fact, and we cannot deny this fact. Thank you.
Well noted, Jaspalji. Well noted. Thank you very much, and see you in the next program. We will tell you the schedule when it's arranged. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.